Trump has declared in a recent message that the US has won this war. In fact, he's declared it many, many times. On the other side, we're sitting over here in Qom, in the city of Qom, and things seems to be perfectly fine. And this is the battle of narratives. While there's a war going on out there, there's also two very big different perceptions on how the war is going forward. And this is what we want to discuss today, inshallah. This is not a news outlet. We're not here to do political commentary. We just want to understand the situation that's happening on ground from an Islamic perspective. And for that, we have Sheikh Migdad and Sheikh Ali over here with us to answer the questions. And we have, alhamdulillah, a group of brothers and sisters who are here as well to hear the discussion and ask any questions. So let's get started with this. So this morning, I think, again, around the same time, we heard some explosions in the outskirts of Qom. And it's been happening over a few days. So there is a war going on, and despite the fact that victory has been claimed many, many times, right? I think this is probably the only war in history that's ever happened that is the one war that's ever happened that had this many victories, right?
Like obliterated like a few.
Yeah. So they've destroyed things that have already been destroyed. So it's like amazing. It's something that has no precedence in history, and I think this is the president, I think that the only president that could have ever done that.
Interesting, it does have precedence. So. There's a very good video, we can share it in the link maybe later, where Imam Khomeini in the 8-year war, this is very relevant for just now, almost unbelievable. He says that you've destroyed the Khark island again. And he said, how many times are you going to destroy the same thing? The first time you hit it, you said you've leveled it with the ground. If it's leveled with the ground, then there's no oil left. Why have you attacked it 49 times?
Okay.
And every single time you claim that you've leveled it with the ground now.
Interesting. So,
so it repeats itself for the same two sides.
Repeating itself. Nice. History is repeating itself literally on ground and in the battle of narratives. So let's start with this, that there's a lot of claims about the fact that the war has been won and there's different reasons given for that. The fact that our leadership, the Ayatollah Shahid Sayyid Khamenei was killed on the first day of the war. Many of the top generals were killed. And this has been given as the criteria for the fact that America has won the war. There's a lot of political analysis that says that that's not the case, but we'll put all of those aside. Let's hear it from our perspective. So if you can start with Sheikh Migdad.
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. So I think before, let's come back to the first point they mentioned, like the situation over here on the ground. There are many viewers out there that are concerned about us. They're concerned asking, are we in bunkers? Do we have electricity? Are we
are in a basement, to be fair, but that's standard over here.
Are we queuing because there's shortage of food, etc.? And I think it's important for us to explain and really show that everything is very normal over here. Our classes are going normal. The Ahsan program is going very normal, right, Ahsan? The lifestyle is very normal. It doesn't, I don't want to say it doesn't feel like war, because obviously we are into it. It feels like, because every night we are out.
I think it feels more like war, not because of the suffering, but because of the energy and the enthusiasm that we're hitting.
And the victory,
right?
Hit because you hit very well. Yeah. I think that's important, because really people, I don't know if you've received phone calls or not, but people are worried about us, and you want to feel like, sometimes I don't even give news of how we are to the outside world, thinking everything's so normal, but everybody's so worried about outside.
Honestly, when the war started and I was outside, if I didn't have the experience of the 12-day war last year, and how I remember how the media was so biased and they kept making it feel like the war was won and everything was done, if I didn't have that experience when the war started and I was there, I would have felt completely depressed. I would have felt that it's gone, Iran is going to die. So definitely, if you don't have experience of what war against Iran looks like, you might be very scared. But alhamdulillah, things are not the way they are being depicted back then.
But at the same time, we can't deny the fact that there have been many people killed. Civilians, innocent lives have been lost. Shuhada, including in Qom as well, outskirts of Qom. So we can't deny that, yes, there has been an attack. And obviously, as you mentioned, Sayyid Shahid, right from the beginning of the war, many of the great commanders.
So I was joking
with some of the brothers, like, you come across these amazing individuals, you fall in love with them, and then 2-3 days later they become shaheed. And it feels like sad. So I think it's important we discuss this. Victory, not victory. Are we losing? Is this, should we go into despair?
Ali, can we not call this a loss? If we've lost some of the best people that we had in the system, best in the sense both politically and also people we held at heart, right? Ayatollah Khamenei, some of the amazing generals, a lot of innocent people, a lot of infrastructure. We've lost a lot, right? Why are we still insisting on not accepting this as a loss?
I think to answer the question, we have to identify what victory and loss really means. It's very important that we understand the concept and we're able to apply it. Victory is in terms with a person's goals. If, for example, let's say I want to today clean my whole house, right? A very basic everyday example. And I managed to clean this table. Is that a victory or not? I've not achieved the goal that I had. So I wouldn't assume myself victorious. But let's say I wanted to, for example, clean one room. And I managed to clean that room. Over here, I've achieved my goal. So victory is actually a concept that is thrown around loosely a lot. But if we want to define it properly, it's achieving one's goals. To apply to the situation we're in just now, we have to see who initiated the war. And the beauty is that Iran, and specifically Shaheed Ayatollah Khamenei, continuously mention that we are not going to start this war. In fact, there's a famous clip of Shaheed Qasim Soleimani where he says that as well. He says that we're not going to start the war. We're not the ones that start the war. And they didn't start the war this time either. They weren't the people that started the war. So we have to ask the people who initiated it, the people who had the operation, right? Fury, right? Epic Fury, the war that they wanted to wage against Iran. What were their objectives? So I've actually taken out Trump's statements that he had on the very first day of the war. And let's see if he's achieved this. I think that's the best way to go forward. Let's look at what he promised that he wanted to achieve and whether they actually managed to do this or not. So he says, I'm actually quoting this verbatim, exactly his words. The US military is undertaking a massive and ongoing operation to prevent this very wicked, radical dictatorship from threatening America and our core national security interests. This is the very first day. This is 2:30 a.m. where he came with a cap. You couldn't even see his eyes. He was probably really disturbed from what was happening on the first day. He says that we're going to destroy their missiles. That's a very clear statement that he's made. And raise their missile industry to the ground. It will be totally, again, obliterated. He realized that he's obliterated it already, so he noted that, by the way. He's paying attention to this, that he's already obliterated it.
Once?
He's going to do it one more time again. We're going to annihilate their navy. We're going to ensure...
against the word. The word means you've already destroyed it.
Doesn't matter. He paid attention to it. That's what's important. We're going to annihilate their navy. We're going to ensure that the region's terrorist proxies can no longer destabilize the region. I don't even need to go through each one of these. Each of these goals are on the ground.
So let's talk about
the end is really important. And we will ensure that Iran does not obtain a nuclear weapon. It's a very simple message. They will never have a nuclear weapon. That's the end. So he's presented a list of goals over here. Interesting if you want to compare it to what he said just this morning, our time. Local time, it was night over there. I have made very clear from the beginning of Operation Epic Fury, in his words, that we will continue until our objectives are fully achieved. So he's also paying attention that the objectives need to be achieved. The only sad thing is that he himself, in different statements, has continuously said these objectives have been achieved. So this is something.
Victory, right?
He's claimed victory so many times, and today again he says we're going to continue until our objectives are achieved. So you see a
let's analyze
contradiction in the way
we said
that
we don't want to we don't want to analyze exactly his words, okay? Because yes, he just rambles about different things. But if we're to say as a nation, as an ideology that's going forward, okay, what are their objectives? So number one, they were talking about regime change, right? Then they're talking about removing the threat, which is kind of destroying missiles, right? 3 is taking over resources, right? We're talking about istiqbar, we're talking about a nation that wants to rule over and take over resources, kind of what they did in Venezuela and other countries. So if we just take these, and obviously then involving the entire world against us and taking authority. If we look at these 4, or these 3 and 4 as objectives, can we say that they have been victorious or not?
So again, if you look at what he's claiming, yes. If you look at what's happening on the ground,
So let's see what's
even
happening.
what he's claiming that Iran will never have a nuclear weapon,
Exactly.
which we
So
were
let's
never
analyze.
and Iran was never planning to do that.
going after that.
The missile system.
So let's
Chef-
speak about the missiles. What's interesting, do you want to speak about the nuclear first?
Okay, now we talk about, I was going to go to regime change first, because that's primary.
Missiles, if you look at, that's what he started with and he spoke again about. Iran has actually had the highest number of missiles launched in the previous week, except for the first 2 days of the war. Since then, it's been 30.
But it has been
32,
reduced, though, no?
33.
If you look at the
it
graph.
dropped and then it went back up. If you look at the last week,
But
it's
this
gone up.
is where again we don't want to go too much into analysis, but just generally speaking, it's not about numbers, right? It's about the quality of the hits, about what we're hitting, how we're hitting it, the fact that we're still able to hit this many.
Essentially,
whilst
being
he
able
had-
to strike when you've annihilated, obliterated a military's missile power, and they're still firing missiles extremely strongly, even if it's a few missiles.
Very precisely at very important points, right?
Okay.
That plane that was attacked 2-3 days ago, that was very big damage that they
Okay. So I think one of the things we can say is maybe people outside don't get the right news, because I think while we're sitting over here, we know what's happening because we've seen some of the images.
No,
or
I
there's
think
a
they're
lot
getting the
of censure
information.
as well.
They're getting the information, they're just not getting the perspective, because from there's so many tweets and so many videos talking about the fact that, oh, they've won, that people are forgetting to put these two together, that if you've won, then what about all this information? Everybody's heard about right now, if I'm not mistaken, Amazon servers in Bahrain and stuff, two important buildings were attacked. 2 days ago, that plane was attacked, and many more things. I'm just mentioning some of the things that come to the top of my mind. So people see this information. I don't think the information is hidden, right? It's just that they're not putting the dots together.
And the information on, look, this is a very clear claim. Anyone that wants to work with this claim, we have annihilated their missile power. Why is Iran able to fire missiles the way they are doing just now? If they've hit every launcher, they've hit every missile that they were supposed to fire, and what is the reality with that
My
just
issue with the discussion is that, okay, they haven't achieved their goals, so they're not victorious. But why are we claiming victory? Isn't this a lose-lose situation where they've lost, but we've also lost? Over here, there's a claim, and it's a big claim that needs to be defended, if you want to say that. Despite having lost all of these very key people, very key infrastructure, the missile program has been affected to a certain extent. The nuclear program has been affected. Pharmaceutical buildings have been hit. Industrial complexes have been hit. How can you still claim that you're victorious? At one point, isn't this too arrogant to say that, look, we're still victorious?
And
you're on your knees.
Add to it as well. Regime change has happened.
Regime change hasn't happened. The slogan
we've lost
is the same.
right? We've lost the
regime is not a person, right? It's the system behind it. So if you look at the system behind it, in fact, this is a beautiful execution of a beautifully designed system.
Yeah.
A system that was created that would you call regime change if, for example, the leader was to pass away?
No, if it's not.
What would be regime change? It's a system in place that's supposed to pick
So
the
you can
next
say the
leader.
system is still in place.
So in fact, I would say
it showed itself extremely strongly.
So this is one thing that I feel people out there don't know about. The fact that when Ayatollah Khamenei was killed, straight away the constitution was applied. And the constitution said that there's 3 leaders who are going to take the place of the killed supreme leader. So you had the head of, you had the president, you had the head of parliament, and you had the
judiciary and one member from the council.
So Ayatollah Rafi came. And that was an application of the constitution. So that means the constitution is still there. The whole system is still functioning. The new supreme leader who was chosen was not chosen haphazardly. The military didn't put him up there. He was chosen based on a constitutional process, which was at the assembly of experts of 88 ulama. Despite the difficulty in gathering together, they came together and they elected him. And this was an election. We'll talk about these details later. Just very quickly, just to say that the constitution is being applied, so regime change hasn't happened. But again, the problem is there. They aren't victorious. They haven't reached their goals. But we're on our knees.
I think it's good to speak about victory, but can we discuss a little bit more about them being victorious? The reason being is that something they are continuously claiming. Let's see if that statement, that claim that they have, has any truth within it. Ourselves, we've not claimed victory in that sense.
The fact that Trump is saying it, we know it's not true.
So what I thought is important to do, and you can cut me off if you think this is going on a tangent, is to show that the war just now is a small part of a big story. The war just now is not to be separated from a bigger story. And the bigger story, if you think it's appropriate, I'll mention it, cut me off at any point you think it's not important to go into, is that as soon as a country, a nation of people stood up and said, we are not going to tolerate being told what to do. We're not going to take total submission, total surrender, as Trump puts it.
American dictatorship.
American hegemony and dictatorship. We're not going to take that hegemony. We're not going to take any outside, external, human, non-godly authority that wants to rule us. As soon as they said this and set up a nation on this base, if you look at Iran's very initial and primary slogan, it's Istiqlal Azadi. Istiqlal means to be independent from others. We don't want to depend on the West. We don't want to depend on the East either. Right? Independence. As soon as a nation put this forward for hegemonies in the world, that's something that was extremely threatening. And that's why you see right from that point, they did everything they could to get rid of such a nation. And so victory has to be looked at from that perspective, right from that point, from before 1979, when they waged war against such a group of people, such a nation. As soon as it established mass assassinations, up to 16,000 people were killed. The president, the prime minister, multiple times. The people in the highest level of parliament, the people that were in the party of the revolution that succeeded. All of these people were killed. Ayatollah Khamenei himself at that point there was a targeted assassination against him. And alhamdulillah, he was safe from that. Right then they wage an 8-year war. World War I is 4 years, or 5 years. World War II is 5 or 6 years. 8 years, but we don't hear about this in history, where a country invaded this very newly formed revolution, right? It was just getting its feet. They didn't have the military expertise at the time, yet everyone came to the battlefront, everyone came to the forefront, and they protected their land for 8 years. 8 years is something that we pass quickly. After that, there's a very nice clip, and you can find this again. I don't know, can we put links?
Yeah.
This can be shared. I'll share this link. In 2002, Benjamin Netanyahu has a session where he's advising the CIA, and he talks about regime change in Iraq and Iran. And he compares these two and he says that Iraq, we have to go to war, it's about when. But Iran, war isn't the strategy. We have to think of another strategy. And that's where he says they have antennas, they have satellites, they have media. This is a public address to the CIA, 2002. The link can be shared as well. This is his words, highlighting the power of Western TV shows like Melrose Place. He says people in Iran watch these things. They know about Beverly Hills. He speaks like this, right?
What is the best place to proceed? It's not a question of whether Iraq's regime should be taken out, but when should it be taken out? It's not a question of whether you'd like to see a regime change in Iran, but how to achieve it. Iran has something that Iraq doesn't have. Iran has, for example, 250,000 satellite dishes. It has internet use. I once said to the heads of the CIA when I was prime minister that if you want to advance regime change in Iran, you don't have to go through the CIA cloak and dagger stuff. What you want to do is take very large, very strong transponders and just beam Melrose Place and Beverly Hills 2050 and all that into Tehran and into Iran, because that is subversive stuff. They watch it, the young kids watch it, the young people, they want to have the same nice clothes at the same houses and swimming pools and so on. And that is something that is available in internal forces of dissension that are available in Iran. And
that's why they changed the direction of war for a good 15, 17 years. If you look at Mahsa Amini, you look at what happened in, when is 88 over here, when would it be? 2008 or 9, around then. Yeah. If you look at the Green Revolution that they tried to do at that time, all of this was an example of this, what they just tried to do a little while ago. Again, they're seeing that that's not successful. They revert back to their brute force methodology of trying a war. They tried that again in June 2025. Again, 12 days in, they saw that they haven't succeeded. But now they've come in with their final chance. Maybe they'll try again.
So you're saying basically that they tried so many different ways and they could not succeed. So there's no victory at that point.
There is no victory.
And there was no choice but to attack in this way.
Had they been victorious, they would have stopped. But they hadn't. They're continuing. They're saying our mission continues. We need to get rid of this country that's standing on its own feet and is threatening every single thing that we stand for.
It goes back to what we talked about in the previous podcast, right? That the ideology of this nation is to stand against the oppression, right? To stand against that which is shirk, that which is against Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala.
And the final excuse they use, like he said at the end, is the nuclear threat. those of us who remember 2002 and 3, WMD, right? Weapons of mass destruction. That was their pretext of entering Iraq. Obviously, they realized later, they didn't realize, they admitted later that there was no threat. And right now, Joe Kent and other people have said, right? Joe Kent was the one who was head of the counter-terrorism of the USA. Very high position. He says that there was no imminent nuclear threat of Iran just now. And they've admitted it as well. But they've used this as a pretext to begin this war. So if you want to really put aside what Trump is saying, like you said, right? I mean, he says things. But what really is happening is they want to get rid of this independence and this strength and this ability that exists within this nation.
Okay. So
And that's the question then. Did they succeed in doing that or no?
So alhamdulillah, they haven't, right? So that's something that we can see.
Correct. And if you the best way to see that is that whenever a war is being fought anywhere in the world, you look at the army against the army. But the beauty of this war, because it's a war that's set and it's a protection of a people and a nation, not an army, not land. That's why the people, their presence in the streets is actually as important, the heads and the commanders have been saying this, as the presence of the military officials and the army. The people in the streets are showing that, look, we'll take hits. We will take damage. You said there has been damage. There has been damage. We've lost personalities. We'll take all of that. We'll take our family members being killed. We'll take our children being killed. We'll take all of this because we want to show them that despite whatever you throw at us, you want to put your most modern technology of warfare against us, we're standing strong. And so victory is really this, that if ever this resolve was to reduce or to cease to exist, then we'd give them victory.
Okay, so
but I would say that it's actually reversed. I think the people have become more, in the years I've been here, I don't know if it's the same for you guys, I've never seen this resolve.
Okay, so you said that the victory means achieving goals. We looked at their side and we found that these were the goals, they didn't achieve victory. On our side, we said we're achieving victory. So what are our goals? Because we can ask this question that, okay, true, we have kept this independence, but at what cost? We've lost lives, we've lost important lives, we're living in economic difficulty. Politically, for a long time at least, we were, quite pushed away. Iranians would be ashamed of saying they're Iranians outside the borders. So what are our goals that we can claim over here that this is victory and this cost is worth it?
The golden word of today, resistance. Right? As long as we are able to say we're resisting, we've won a victory. Right? As long as, and this is why many people today, for example, say, why did South Lebanon have to get engaged? Why did South Lebanon come and kind of show itself? But it's a suicidal cause, right? They're losing the battle right now. This is what the narrative is today, right? If it's not so clear for Iran, it's at least very clear for South Lebanon. The answer goes back to the fact that you can say that I am still resisting. It means that you're winning, because the enemy wants to destroy. The enemy wants to take authority. It wants to overtake you, right? And the up until the time you can say, I'm still here independent from you, I'm still showing strength fighting against you.
I'm not going to bow down.
I'm not going to bow down, right? You're winning. That's a victory, right? And this is where we have to really change our perspective, and I guess this is why we're doing this podcast, is to the battle of perspectives and narratives, is that we have to realize that we don't count victory and loss based on infrastructure. We don't count victory and loss based on how many, for example, military bases have been attacked or destroyed, right? Or how many missiles we've lost, or even how many people we've lost. That's so beautiful, because it's an ideology, because it's a movement, because it's going towards Tawheed and towards Allah. And so even if you lose Sayyid Shaheed, right, the Rahbar, right, as long as the movement is carrying on, right, we're winning.
So isn't this a political, theological victory for the mullahs? What about the people on ground, right? The people who are being killed, the people whose family members are killed, the people who just lost, for example, their shops under bombardment and they don't have any living anymore. What about them? How can they feel like they're victorious?
We should go and ask them. There's the people that are on the streets. You were on the streets yesterday. I was yesterday. Qom, a city that has so-called mullahs, lots of them. The crowd is 90%, 95% in many areas, non-mullahs. They're coming here to show their support, to say that we're here. In fact, a lot of them have very strange statements. Literally, if a person hasn't experienced them, they won't know what's going on.
difficult.
Really, you can't understand. Like some days, even for example, we're a bit tired at night. We're like, oh, should we go? The numbers, they're still there. They don't care. Like it was the night of Qadr, they're there for Quds Day at 9 o'clock in the next morning. The same night they're again there at the next night. They're again tonight. Nowadays are the days of Nowruz. These people don't sit at home. Today's the day we'll see tonight, right? They don't sit at home at all. But the numbers are there. Last night was one of the biggest ever. Right? The people are there. They see it as their victory. Who are we to say that it's the mullah's victory? They themselves see it as their victory. And they're ready to take the cost of it.
And so that when you talk to the families of shuhada, right, there's a primary, what you mentioned, right, the word about people. They've lost a father, a son, a brother, a sister. And there's so many videos out there, right? I wish we could share some of them where the way they talk about it, right? It's, they don't even accept condolences, right? For many people, it's very surprising. You come, someone has passed away, you say condolences to them. They don't accept condolences. Like, congratulations, right? Why? Because you've managed to sacrifice something on this ideology, on this path, on this movement. And that is a victory, right? In the Quran, for example, we talk about shahada, which is such an important concept. I think people are far outside of these regions, are far from the true understanding of what shahada means, right? These people, when the Quran talks about shahada, it says, look, it's between two victories. Either we win the battle or become shaheed. For us, shahada is also a victory, right? So in that sense, we have to appreciate that, look, the blood that is being spilled is not going to go to waste. The blood that is being spilled does not reflect a loss. Rather, it strengthens. Rather, it is part of the movement. Blood will be spilled, right? But as long as the movement carries on, as long as we're present, as long as we're doing everything to be in line with the nusra of Allah, the help of Allah, then the promised victory will come, definitely.
Something that's very interesting to see is they had this interview where they went in the streets and told people that, would you accept a ceasefire just now? And none of the people want to accept a ceasefire. Whereas if anywhere in the world, they're praying for a ceasefire. The people of Iran are saying, we're not going to take any form of ceasefire. A ceasefire has to be one that has our conditions. And those conditions show our strength and independence. If any of the terms of the ceasefire is going to infringe upon our independence and our strength, we're not going to accept that. That's a position of strength after being bombed, after losing houses. There's very famous videos where people lose their houses and they say, Fada, right? Like, may this be sacrificed for the revolution.
So I think the point comes back to the fact that the people, at least in this region, have realized and accepted the fact that their victory, their political, theological victory, is linked also to their economic victory as well, right? It's true that temporarily they're losing, but in the long run, for the country to have prosperity, to have economic stability, to be a flourishing country, it needs to go through this difficult process, right? It's like a surgery that happens for you to become even better, even stronger later on.
Let me give you another perspective as well. I think it's an acceptance that, look, we can't fly away from battles and fight. This world is about, I don't want to use the word jihads loosely, right? The noble jihad, the fight. If you look at the hadith that we have, that tahta sayf, right? All goodness comes under tahta sayf, under the sword. In other words, and I think this is part of the Western modernity world, right? Where we have to be peaceful nations, right? Peaceful nations. Peace is about everything that we want, right? It's made us passive. It's made us feel like, as long as I'm happy going to work, going to the gym, watching the football game, right? That's my life. We've achieved victory. Not realizing that, look, Allah wants something more from us. We have to realize that we can't be passive. Life is not about being passive. There is a level of jihad that is required for success to come. Sacrifice is required for victory to come. And that's a concept that we, in our comfort zone in the West and in outside these regions, we need to come out of that and really realize that, look, istiqamah is important, resistance is important, sacrifice needs to be there. And once you appreciate this concept, you're like, oh, hold on a second, there is a victory over here. I'm not scared of the fight, I'm not scared of the battle anymore.
One verse that puts us across really nicely is Surah Al-Hajj, verse number 40. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم الذين أخرجوا من ديارهم. The people that were removed from their houses. This verse is so relevant, it seems like it's literally revealed for such a situation. The people that were removed from their houses, بغير حق. There was no right in removing them from their houses. There was no valid reason. إلا أن يقولوا ربنا الله. The only thing is that they stood and said, Allah is our Rabb. Allah is the one that will define what happens in my life. Nobody else has the right to define that. And then Allah teaches us the principle that you just put across very beautifully. وَلَوْلَا دَفْعُ اللَّهِ النَّاسِ بَعْضَهُمْ بِبَعْضٍ. Allah said, if I had not made this system where I would repel certain people through other people. People who are oppressing need to be repelled, need to be put back to where they are and sat back on their seats. Allah says if this was not the case, لَهُدِّمَتْ. What would be destructed? People say that I'll go to my mosque and I'll go to my car. صَوَامِعُ وَبِيعُ وَالصَّلَاةُ وَمَسَاجِدُ. All centers of worship would be destroyed. يُذْكَرُ فِيهَا اسْمُ اللَّهِ كَثِيرًا. Places where Allah's name is remembered a lot. You think you're going to have your mosque peaceful if you allow for the hegemon powers to step in and do what they want? No, the verse is saying that Allah is the one that repels certain people through certain people to keep even the mosques alive.
You know, sometimes when you go Arba'in, you sit in the Haram al-Hussein, or you sit in Samarra, for example, you have to realize blood was spilled for this protection of this haram, right? It didn't come for free. I can fly in from like across different continents and sit over here and enjoy the nice cooler, for example, the nice tiles that we put across. But blood was spilled for this, right? The jihad is part of our life, our lifestyle, right? It's resistance has to be there, and in this there is victory.
وَلَيَنْصُرَنَّ اللَّهُ مَن يَنْصُرُهُ. The rest of the verses. Allah will assist those people that assist Allah. إِنَّ اللَّهَ لَقَوِيٌّ عَزِيزٌ. Allah is the one that's strong and the one that's impenetrable. Allah is the force that cannot be changed. Whatever Allah wants will happen.
So
the continuation is really beautiful. Anyone wants to read it as well.
So we've reached victory because on one side they haven't reached victory because they haven't achieved their goals. We have on our side reached victory because we are still on our goals. We have our goals. We're resisting, we are upholding our values, we are standing firm on what we have.
We haven't bowed down to them.
We haven't bowed down to them. Okay, and that has come at a cost. We've lost lives, we've lost infrastructure, and the people are fine with that. So as long as the people are happy with that. When we look back in history, we find that there were times in the lives of our imams or even within the Muslim Ummah where sometimes we did take a step back, avoid war, and accept again the same victory, but through the lens of peace, right? You said right now that we can't have peace all the time. We have to fight. We have to do jihad. But what about those instances where peace was actually the solution? So we have, for example, starting right to the beginning of Islam with the Treaty of Hudaybiyah, right? Which was actually considered in the Quran as a victory. Right? Shaykh, if you can pull out the verse. It was considered as a victory for the mu'mineen, but that was not a battle that was fought. It was still a victory. You have, for example, we talk about Imam Hassan's sulh with Muawiyah.
Today we have to be Hassanis, right?
Right. We have on the zahir, on the apparent, this was a failure. It was a defeat by Imam Hassan and a victory for Muawiyah. But all of the points about that sulh were there, and the objectives that Imam Hassan met were all victorious, right? So Imam Hassan was victorious in that, even though he didn't fight. Imam Hussein fought, he became shaheed, but we call that a victory because he stood his ground and the values kept going. Imam Ridha, for example, he succumbed to the pressure by Ma'mun. He accepted to take leadership, supposedly, in his own terms, right? But again, he didn't fight a war. He didn't say, I'm going to fight Ma'mun who is forcing me to take this. He accepted and he went. He could have joined. There's a lot of Alawi movements against the Ma'mun at the time. In fact, that is one of the reasons why Ma'mun wanted Imam Ridha to become a crown prince, because that will calm down the Alawi revolutions. Imam Ridha could have joined or gathered the Alawis and said, let's revolt against Ma'mun. He didn't choose the path of war, right? Today, why are we not choosing the path of peace? And why are we saying we need to resist, we need to fight, even if it costs the lives of amazing people like this, the lives of a lot of innocent people? The global economy is at stake, right? Hasn't Iran gone a bit too far in that sense and say we want victory, but we're going to make the whole world suffer for it, not only the region, the countries around? Do you want
to officially apologize to people for their petrol prices?
I'm not part of that.
Of course you are. We're part of the haq over here. And so we're apologizing, sorry.
Why is this? But they're all on the side of haq as well, so they're all.
Well, we've given shuhada, and they can give more money for petrol.
So why couldn't we have gone down the path of peace to achieve victory? From Hudaybiyah?
Yeah, so very interesting. Actually, the verse is the answer itself. لقد رضي الله, this is Surah Fath, verse number 18. لقد رضي الله عن المؤمنين إذ يبايعونك تحت الشجرة. Allah was pleased with the believers when they pledged allegiance to you under the tree. فعلم ما في قلوبهم. Allah knew what was in their hearts. فأنزل السكينة عليهم. Allah sent down sakina upon them. That's its own discussion. But it's not that was a victory. وأثابهم فتحا قريبا. Allah says as a result of this allegiance you pledge to the Prophet, Allah has rewarded you a near victory. I think that's the answer itself.
Which is the conquest of Makkah.
The conquest of Makkah.
And the destruction of
Which
shirk.
was again done peacefully.
But it was the destruction of shirk.
It wasn't initiated peacefully. It was initiated as an entry. The other side surrendered. Of course, when people surrender, we're not going to attack them for fun.
They attacked with power, right?
There's multiple verses that talk about this. So, from the other side, if they were hostile, then it wasn't going to end peacefully necessarily. When we're with the truth, we stand with the truth. Whoever comes in the way of the truth, they have to be moved aside. You're not allowed to be an oppressor. You're not allowed to be somebody who takes a spot that isn't yours. If everyone's in their own place, and I was going to say, towards the fuel prices and all of this, what Iran is doing just now, we'll look back at maybe 5, 10, 15 years down the line and see how they change the course of history. That nations in the world are now understanding that, wait a sec, those people that we thought we had to bow down to, and worse words that they've used as well, those nations are people that aren't going to be there for us at any point. Those nations, if we stand up in front of them, we're not going to lose anything. In fact, we're going to become stronger. In fact, the infectious nature, forgive my words, of resistance is something that's more dangerous for them than the war at hand just now. It's when countries like, for example, I won't give names of countries, but from South America to Africa to Asian countries to possibly European countries to some extent right now, understand that we also can resist. For Italy, for Spain, for UK to stand up and say that we're not going to give you our airspace to fly over. Spain went even a bit further than that. Right? That's a small form of resistance. And that's really dangerous for the West. That's really dangerous for the powers just now.
Yeah.
That, look, people are learning that because they always lived with this threat, right? It's like the king of the playground. If you mess with me, I'm going to beat you up. Nobody dares mess with that person. But when somebody stands up and says, okay, beat me up. And then they realize, wait, the beating up wasn't so bad. Another stands up, another. That's really dangerous.
That's and I want to play a video about this point as well. But before I come to that, see, negotiations, okay, and peace treaty, they're a temporary solution, right? When it comes to Hudaybiyah, it was temporary. It's just for a year. So then next year we can do the Fatah Makkah. We can conquer Makkah completely and destroy it, right? Take over. Imam Hussein's peace treaty as well was temporary. It was supposed to be something that will allow a revolution to happen. If you look at the conditions on the peace treaty, they were in a way that Muawiyah dies and then it comes back to Imam Hassan, it comes back to Imam Hussein, right? It was a temporary movement. And in fact, if you look at what's happening in Iran as well, when they're negotiating, right? There was negotiation. For years there have been negotiations happening. And every time negotiations happen, right, the enemy attacked. Why? Because they realized that negotiation was a temporary thing. Right? At the end of the day, it's haqq against batil. One, conflict will have to take place. Conflict will be naturally coming to place. But negotiations is good as a temporarily, as a strategic point, as a temporary thing for us to then gain.
Another verse about this, Surah Anfal, verse number 16, talks about two people that are allowed to run away from war. It's a big sin, right? There's war happening, you're not allowed to run away. But Allah says in the Quran, two people are allowed to run away from war. وَمَنْ يُوَلِّهِمْ يَوْمَئِذٍ دُبُورَهُ إِلَّا مُتَحَرِّفًا لِقِتَالٍ. There's a type of move and maneuver that I do that, it looks like I'm retreating just now, but I'm just going to come back and hit harder. Or I'm going to maneuver from the side and come from the side again. متحرف. A person is maneuvering for war. أو متحيزا إلى فئة. Or you know that there's a group that's coming, you can retreat to join that group to attack again. So with arrogance, when it comes to powers that want to total surrender, want total submission, we don't have peace because their peace has no meaning with such people. Mm-hmm. They're trying to take our resources, they're trying to take our independence. We cannot have long-term peace, but strategic peace for a short amount of times to allow us to regain and become strong again, like the ceasefire that was signed in June 2025, right? Iran said, okay, fine, you're going to stop, we're going to stop as well.
Okay. I just want to bring a bit of perspective again, because right now this idea of jihad and war and fighting is being made really bold. And when I talked about peace, you said, okay, it's peace, but it's temporary negotiations, we still want to fight. This sounds a bit like warmongering. It's not too different to Lindsay and Hexet right now.
The careful word.
So what's the difference over here, that when you're talking about jihad and when you talk about we want to negotiate but it's a temporary solution, what's the difference in this narrative that you're talking about with the narrative that's coming out from the White House right now with regards to Iran?
The careful word over here is that when it comes to, see, you can't have peace with an oppressor. An oppressor tells you, he walks up to your house and he says, okay, look, this house is mine. It's my house. What are you doing over here? You say, okay, half off. He turned up at your doorstep, he's got half of your house. You can't have peace and negotiations with an oppressor. But a country that's not oppressive, a country that minds its own business, a country that forget being supportive and helping each other and cooperating, that of course we have peace with them. Countries that mind their own business and don't want to oppress and don't want to step in, and that's why Iran's policy in the region has been very beautiful as well. Countries that have been involved in the war, they're only targeting, and each time they explain what they hit as well. Bases or personnel or strategic infrastructure connected to the enemy that's attacking just now.
But you know, Sheikh Ali's point is valid. Let me just, basically, we shouldn't come across as constantly in jihad, right? But you have to understand that people back home are also constantly in jihad, right? People who, for example, parents, right, are lovely parents that want to protect their kids from the animations that are really bad, from the media, from websites that they shouldn't go to. They're constantly fighting. They're constantly in a battle of how do I take my child, how do I keep my child free from the invasion, but at a mental level. So they're fighting a different type of war, right? There's a invasion that's happening from the enemy to take our kids away, to take them away towards like sins, towards haram, etc. And parents are constantly fighting. How do I stop this? Same with kids that are going to school. Same with youth, right? At madrasa, teachers are constantly fighting. In our community, we're constantly fighting. I mean, you can't deny that. That is a constant fight. And this is actually called Jihad al-Akbar, right?
So I was just going to say, so just to define the terms, the word jihad is a loaded word today, right? Jihad today in the media, and against the battle of narratives, you're using a word jihad that today the narrative is that jihad is that thing that you do, Allahu Akbar, you know, like that. Yeah. So that's the idea we have. So here, when you talk about jihad, you're talking about
that's because
a struggle.
You've played too much Call of Duty, you see.
I haven't, but I'm aware of people who do play Call of Duty.
We're not going to point at anybody over here.
We're not going to point fingers and name. The point is that it's a loaded term, and what you mean by jihad over here means a greater struggle, which also includes that struggle on the battlefield when it becomes relevant, right? Yeah. When there is a power that is trying to attack you physically, then you also have to fight militarily.
When it's emotional, attack emotional. When it's and when it's to do with nafs, it's to do with the nafs, right? I mean, Allah tells us this world is for this. This world is for the jihad, for us to struggle towards Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Allah says, look, the moment you say you believe, right, at the beginning of Surah Ankabut, the more you say you believe, you'll be tested. What do you have to do in this test? You have to struggle, you have to fight, you have to resist. They're key words for us as believers. That's what we do on a day-to-day basis, what I do, right? I fight any sort of distraction away from Allah. Anything that wants to conquer me and take me away from Allah. Now, sometimes it can be the shaitan that takes me towards sins. Sometimes it can be the website that will take me away from Allah. Sometimes the nation that comes and attacks, and the war takes different types of shape and form.
Okay, so we have this situation where there's an aggressor that has come, and we've had to defend ourselves. So I think, again, in all these answers, we shouldn't forget some of the very basic facts on ground. That the Islamic Republic did not ask for this war. We were in the middle of negotiating. Twice it happened that every time we were negotiating, we were attacked. So we shouldn't forget the basic facts on ground that are being questioned again by the media. The media is trying to sideline these things and make us forget and make it look like the Islamic Republic is actually the one that has started the war. And it's very interesting how in the White House again they were saying this: we did not start the war. Like these kind of words are being said, right, in the media. So it's a fact that Islamic Republic did not start the war. They were negotiating in good faith, even though sometimes we would not have agreed with the negotiations generally, but it was the negotiations were happening. They were aggressed and very unjustly, right? It was not an aggression just on the military infrastructure, but on the general population.
The Minab school was
the Minab school, recently the university, so academic institutions, medical places.
They're all war internationally known, like everybody agrees that war crimes, right? You don't attack infrastructures that are related to energy, related to hospitals, related to medical, education schools. The number of schools that attack, university, hospitals, these are against any kind of international law of war.
Yeah. So basically, even if peace was an option, that option was taken away from the table, right? It was the default option that Iran was looking for. Iran did not start any war. It did not want the war. It was imposed on it. Yeah. And when war is imposed on Iran, Iran's not just going to step back and say, okay, so we surrender, and this is where the whole concept of resistance comes. We need to resist. We need to be able to stand for ourselves, right? And be independent and fight against this war. Then comes the question, and again, this goes back to the very obvious facts, and you did allude to that a few minutes back, is that, okay, this war was between Iran and some of these powers like the US and Israel, but then Iran got the whole region involved, right? It's like spread fire across the whole region, right? So if it was so much after peace, then why did that happen? And I think the answer is pretty obvious, the fact that these are the countries that are allowing the US and Israel to use their bases to attack Iran.
And the bases specifically. The base is a military zone owned by that country to strike from. It's like saying, for example, look, in your house you've got guns pointing towards me that are actively shooting. But because my fight is with that person, I'll let these guns that are owned by that person, operated by personnel of that person, shoot towards me. Iran is clearly attacking the bases in these countries, personnel in these countries, and entrepreneurs or entrepreneurships, businesses that are to the benefit of these regimes.
I think that's fair.
Solely.
Everybody would agree that's fair, right?
So it's not just be military though. There have been civilian casualties.
It depends what you
well.
call civilians, right?
Civilian casualties are different. So you talk about, for example, interceptors intercepting a missile, and then this missile was aimed towards Israel or aimed towards, for example, countries of American interest. Certain countries decide to shoot interceptors to hit those missiles. They fall on these countries and a person dies. Well, this was going towards a target. You took it off its target and you made it land in a place where it may have one or two civilian casualties, which are sad and are not intended and not aimed by, Iran didn't aim for them.
I think these are small factual details that are important to repeat as well, right? Because these get forgotten. And again, you'll see on social media, a lot of these videos are being produced. That, oh, if Iran was...
Because even if you compare like how it's done, like if you look at Mainab school, for example, right? It was a target, and it was targeted 3 times, right? And by them themselves, it's clear, so it was targeted 3 times. It's very different from, for example, a civilian infrastructure that caught fire because of debris, because of an interceptor, right? You realize that that wasn't the target, whilst here it was a target. That's the important comparison.
Absolutely.
I want to come back to this video. We were talking about victory, and to realize who really is victory. This person is Robert Pape. Robert Pape is a professor, is also an advisor to the military. And look what he says.
What will be the new center of world power coming out of this conflict? Netanyahu said it's going to be Israel. He's wrong. It's not going to be Israel, and you can already see who it's going to be today, which is Iran is not just controlling shipping the way people are describing, oil prices the way people are describing. Iran is controlling so much world oil, so much, and oil is so critical to world power that Iran is emerging as a new global center of power. So let me just explain this a moment. So before the war, 33 days ago, there were 3 centers of world power we discussed: the US, Russia, and China. Now, why was Russia even in that mix? Because it had 11% of the world's oil. And of course, it uses that for military purposes. Well, Iran now has double that amount of world oil, more than any other country on the planet. And what that's going to mean are $75–100 billion a year more to put into military. That nuclear enrichment is now more likely than ever to become nuclear weapons. And over time, as the months and the years go on, which I know we're having a hard time coming to grips with the reality that's occurred here, is that this is going to create a new center of world power and dwarf Israel. This, as you can see right away, for all of our lifetimes, oil has been so critical. And it's not just oil, of course, it's gas, it's the energy, it's the fertilizer. This is what Iran has now as a chokehold on the world, but it's 20%. And there's no way you're going to make up for that in the next 3 or 4 years. Even if you start drilling now, it will take that long. So Iran is coming out of this
and we've never seen this in our lifetimes, a new world power center created in a month. That's what's on issue here. So whatever President Trump says tonight, whether he wants to go forward ground war or not, all of this we don't know, and he may not even know. Let's face it. He's been all over the map. The reality, I deal with the realities here. And what we are seeing is escalation reality with strategic consequences. Those aren't over because President Trump thinks he's going to stop and go to Mar-a-Lago and just cut himself off from the world. No, the world will have to live now with this new center of world power. And there's no good way to deal with it. This is why I was so opposed to this war with the modeling I've been explaining. What is NATO? Okay. Yeah. NATO's not just a political club, a talking club of diplomats. It's a military organization with the American general at the top who gives orders to the other countries' militaries. That's what NATO is, okay? It's a command structure. Right now, today, sir, even though that still is in place, do you believe for a second the British Army is going to follow General Kane, the American general? Just imagine if General Kane said, British Army, you go X. That's just not happening. So what I would just say is we've talked about the fading away of NATO for years. We're not at that point anymore. NATO is dead. NATO is in the morgue, and the obituary is what's being written now. So it's already dead. There's no way the Europeans are following the American generals here. And I'm sorry to say, even if it's a Democratic president comes in, they're not. We've elected Donald Trump twice now. The idea the Europeans are going to obey orders from American general, not happening. So this is really going to have also major consequences because we never had to worry about this problem of, these little dust-ups like on Greenland. Well, this may be a future here, and it's a horrible future, but I'm just pointing out what Donald Trump has done here. This is much larger consequences, and the oil shock and the energy shock is already astounding. I'm explaining there's a stage 4 here, and this is even as astounding as it's been already in 33 days. My gosh, the next 6 months, this is going to be the reverse of the end of the Cold War. The end of the Cold War, we shot up like a rocket. Those 90s, Bill Clinton's presidency, oh my goodness, those days, everybody, we all know boy, do we want those days back, right? Well, this is the other way around. We're now on the other end of this, going the other way.
This video reminds me of the verse of the Quran, تَحْسَبُهُمْ جَمِيعًا وَقُلُوبُهُمْ شَتَّى. You think that they're all together, it's a big front, they're all going to attack you. In reality, their hearts themselves are split apart. Between themselves, there's so much disunity. They're not united between themselves. They all have their own opinion, their own different. They're looking for their own profit in this whole thing. Yeah. So when they see that they're not going to profit out of this, they just pull back, and it shatters the whole thing. Yeah. I think Trump went in thinking that he's going to be backed up by.
Trump went thinking this is going to be Venezuela 2 days around. This is what when Said would say, miscalculation. This is what he means. See the enemy, sometimes we think that the enemy is so clever, so wise, but see, the shaitan does miscalculation, right? That's what he was trying to say. Like, they have the military power. They think in their own terms, right? They think military power, they think strength in terms of how many bombs we have, right? And so with that calculation, yes, you can take out this country in 2 days the way they did in Venezuela. But they miscalculated what's on the other side. There's faith, there's an ideology on the other side. So I want to come back to this. I'm showing on the PowerPoint as well other scholars, or you want to don't call them scholars, call them people of influence, professors, military advisors. They've all talked about the failure of this war, right? The fact that the United States of America has lost this war. It's confused. They don't know what to do. It's talking about as the new objective right now is to open the Strait of Hormuz, which is already open before the war. Now they've got to reverse what they did basically. So it's going backwards.
And the last statement was that now we're not going to open it.
Now we're not going to open it, basically.
You can come and take oil from us, or go get it yourself. Be a man and take it yourself.
And it shows what Yasser was saying, the disunity between. It's laughable when somebody says, this is a loss or there's no victory, right? They said it, and we, in our ideology, completely understand that this is a victory, but we need patience, we need steadfastness, it will come at a price, blood will be spilled, right? We have to maintain, and we have to feel that we're in it, and we're ready to sacrifice for it.
One of the questions that's come up, again tying to the fact that you said the victory, one of the criteria for victory is that we're still resisting. So the question comes to the fact that, okay, why did we need to resist in the first place? What attracted Iran to become a target for them? The fact that since the start of the Islamic Republic, it's been about death to America, death to Israel. Iran has always been a thorn in the eyes of these Western powers. Why couldn't Iran have just been like Japan or like the UAE, which was not a threat to anybody, right? Why invest all of that money in missiles rather than in the economy? And just like a country like the UAE that's prospering, right? They don't need to resist to have victory. They were victorious already because they were not bothering anybody, right? Okay, we got them into a war they were not supposed to be in, and that messed up everything. But otherwise, they were prospering. Japan was prospering. So a lot of countries don't put themselves in a position where they're then being attacked and they say, oh, now we're being attacked, we need to resist. Why not choose...
You're not being fair. The Makbar America is preceded by 3 Allahu Akbar first and foremost.
The reality of this is what we spoke about earlier, that it started the other way. Iran was a nation that stood up and said, we're not going to take arrogance, we're not going to take any control, we're not going to take any external authority.
It's been based on enmity towards the West.
No, it doesn't.
The slogan of Makbar America has been there from the start.
Not correct. The initial primary slogan has always been Allahu Akbar, not even preceded.
Yeah.
The slogan that started the revolution,
chronologically.
the slogan that's so beautifully, when I hold the Iranian flag sometimes, I look at the middle of it, and the middle of it is the heart of the flag. La ilaha illallah. La ilaha illallah is in the heart of the flag, and that's the heart of the spirit of these people.
That's what we're talking about.
The people stood for that. And when you say La ilaha illallah, when these people say Ana rabbukumul a'la, and they want total surrender, they are an ilah other than Allah. La ilaha illallah translates to La America, because America is an ilah illallah. So putting aside America,
so
obviously,
Makbar America
not the
is
people.
completely under this shi'ar, this symbol of La ilaha illallah, right? La illallah has the first La. It says no to something. It says no to...
We're rejecting.
Yeah.
Rejecting any arrogance, reject any...
So...
and so you mentioned
so
that...
are you suggesting that by nature the spirit of the Islamic Republic is a spirit that's always going to attract trouble? Because you are putting yourself in a position of being attacked by others, right?
Can you not say the spirit of being a Muslim attracts trouble? The Quran says, right? The moment you say La ilaha illallah, what happens? You'll have tests, right? Allah says in the Quran, Inna alladhina qalu rabbuna Allah. When you say Rabbuna Allah, okay, you want to say, I'm going to pray now, I'm going to fast, Allah is going to be my Lord. What do you need then? ثُمَّ اسْتَقَامُوا. You need istiqamah. It means what? When do we need istiqamah? When you're attacked. In the face of difficulty, in the face of being attacked, in the face of a nation taking you away from it, you need to steadfast, you need to resist, right? So just the fact that you say, you just say that I want to believe, you say that Allah is my Rabb, this itself attracts and necessitates resistance. And this is why the moment you establish Islam as a guidance to your life, you have to have Allahu Akbar in your shi'ar. And the moment you have this, okay, you will find yourself being attacked by others and you have to resist.
The enemy promised, if you look at it at a very broad level of Iman and against Iman, Kufr if you want, the enemy promised enmity before we promised faith. Shaitan said right from day one, right, I'm going to take them all astray. Right, that was promised from day one. He's not going to let Allah's believers and the true believers achieve their goals. That was set from day one. If everybody, let's say it the other way, if everyone in the world was believing and observing Allah's laws and there was nobody that wanted to have authority over other people, then there's no need for mag by anyone.
Okay, so countries are in the region that are also Muslim countries. They've never attracted the wrath of the US the way Iran has. And they're still Muslim countries. They still say La ilaha illallah. The adhan is still going on in their masajid. And everything's working fine. Why are they not attracting trouble, but Iran is?
I think what Trump answered that question in a way that we don't need to answer that question for eternity right now. He called the biggest, the highest GDP in the whole Gulf belongs to Saudi Arabia. It's the strongest country in terms of GDP, in terms of military, in terms of land, in terms of resources, everything, outright. Even way further than UAE. Almost double UAE's GDP. Obviously, the population's almost 3.5 times as big as well. He called the king's son, the person who's running the whole country, a word that I can't even say.
The king, the future king of Saudi Arabia, and I also love the king of Saudi Arabia. What a man he is. When I was there a short time ago, we were together, and he looked at me and he said, you know, it's amazing. 1 year ago, you were a dead country. Now you're the hottest country anywhere in the world. He didn't think this was going to happen. He didn't think he'd be kissing my ass. He really didn't. He thought he'd be just another American president that was a loser, where the country was going downhill. But now he has to be nice to me. You tell him he better be nice to me. He's got to be.
Showing that that person basically is completely subservient and agrees and carries out any order that he has. Amongst these orders, if you want to look at it at a street level, if you look at the country right now, how many of the Islamic values have diminished over the years? Hijab, that was in a way that was no country in the world had it, whether it's correct or not is even a discussion, the way they used to enforce it, implement it, driving and all sorts. Today it's come to a level where they have concerts happening near the holy mosques. Concerts where, I mean, I don't even know how to describe the concerts for you. They had one of the religious personalities go to one of the gambling centers and gamble over there to tell the people this is perfectly fine to do. I mean, is that really standing up and upholding the values of Allah?
But just the fact that this authority can talk like this to another human being, it shows humiliation. And Allah does not want the mu'min to be humiliated. The izzah of a mu'min is that I only worship Allah and nobody else. Right? And this resistance, and I keep emphasizing, so everybody feels a part of it as well. Even those who are living in Toronto and Canada and Dar es Salaam and Sydney and India and Pakistan, you feel that you are also resisting as well. Everybody's resisting against this. The fact that you are fed up of the school system, right? Because it promotes, let's say, values and ideas that are against Islam, right? The fact that you come home and your kids are watching TV, you're fed up of it. The fact that you go to work and it's based on interest, it's promoting capitalism, it's creating more gaps between the poor and rich, you're fed up of all this, right? And you feel like you want to resist. You feel like, I'm done with this, right? This is a state that naturally comes the moment you accept Allah. The moment you say, look, I don't want authority other than Allah. I will only submit to Allah. So it's normal. And this is what really true belief is. Unfortunately, we've lost this concept. We've moved away from the ideologies of Islam and we've become passive. Well, it's okay, we'll live as long as we're happy and comfortable, where we consider ourselves as Muslim. You know, let me tell you two examples. For me, I find it's very fascinating. When Allah appoints Musa alayhi salam in the Quran and says, you have become the prophet, He doesn't tell Musa, go to Bani Israel, spread amongst them how to pray, teach them about Tawheed, teach them about... No. He says, Musa, idhab ila Fir'aun. Straight away, innahu tagha. The first point says, go to the core of the matter. Is this Taghut is over there? You have to eliminate this. Then we'll come to the people and teach them how to pray, etc. Right? Second example, the messenger of Allah, our prophet, he comes down and says, La ilaha illallah. You know, today, for example, you take somebody who says La ilaha illallah in the center of New York. You think anybody has any issue with you? Nobody. Right? You make the biggest of mosque in New York, nobody will say anything. Why? Because this La ilaha illallah is not the true La ilaha illallah. The true La ilaha, the messenger of Allah, straight away, Abu Sufyan hears the La ilaha illallah, he opposes it. The enemy straight away opposes that La ilaha, because they know that La ilaha means that I'm in trouble. I, as the one who wants to be the Rabb over here, I, the one who wants to have authority over others and enslave all the others into my authority and my control, this La ilaha is opposing me, therefore I'm going to oppose it.
La ilaha illallah, practically speaking, at a social level, when you bring that theology in real life, it means no to dictatorship, it means no to oppression, it means fighting against poverty, it means fighting for your rights. And that naturally comes in contradiction and it's head-on against these powers that are doing exactly the opposite.
It means I want to go towards Allah. I want to become a servant of Allah, and everything that stops me from that, I will put it aside.
So I think we've discussed this well. If there's no extra point that you want to add, then maybe we can wrap it up over here. We have more questions about the leadership itself, maybe the system that's functioning over here. We talked about being against a dictatorship, but the media portrays this system over here in the Islamic Republic as a dictatorship system where you have the supreme leader that's dictating everything that's happening. There are questions about the person of Ayatollah Khamenei and these kind of questions that we can discuss in another session, inshallah. Just to wrap up this verse, I think it's a verse that sort of to a certain extent summarizes this, where Allah says, كُتِبَ عَلَيْكُمُ الْقِتَالُ وَهُوَ كُرْهٌ لَكُمْ, right? That you have been told to go and fight. Fighting has been prescribed for you, even though you don't like it, right? So because a lot of people on ground are saying that, we're suffering so much, we're struggling, right? We shouldn't ignore the fact that there is a struggle, there's a lot of lost lives, there's a lot of emotional struggling in this, and it doesn't feel good. It's not a nice feeling, right? Asa an takrahu shay'an wa huwa khayrun lakum. But sometimes there are certain things that are bitter, you don't like them, but there is goodness in it for you, right? Either in it itself or the result of it is good for you. Wa asa an tuhibbu shay'an wa huwa sharrun lakum. You may want to be in a system that promotes more economic development, despite the fact that there's humiliation in it and so on, but there's no khair in it, there's shar in this, right? Eventually there's no goodness that comes out of this kind of system. You'll have to endure a lot of things. You'll have to be weak, you'll have to be humiliated. There will be times when you want to stand up for yourself, but you'll be smacked in the head and be like, you shut up, you don't even have anything to say here. So you have that, right? Wallahu ya'lamu wa antum la ta'lamun. These are times where we have to trust Allah. We have to have the tawakkul and say, you know what, it's true, this is difficult. We're going to trust Allah because Allah knows. Even if I don't know where this is going, I can't pinpoint the exact path this is going to lead to, but I know that behind all of this Allah is leading, so inshallah we can trust that. If there's any other points to add.
No, I think you mentioned very beautiful. I'll just share a quick narration. We feel sad about this thing. I remember when Sayyid Rahbar attained Shahada, I called one of the brothers, I was abroad, talking about the Shahada. He goes to me, Miqdad, I feel happy, right? I feel a sense of joy, a sense of happiness, right? It feels surprising, but you realize that, yes, obviously we mourned, and it's very sad that we had to lose him in this way. But at the same time, you feel happy because he attained his Shahada. That's exactly what he wanted, right? That's the pinnacle of greatness and goodness. At the same time, you can see the effect it has on everything. The entire movement is going in another direction. Right? It's like super power boost, basically, that gave to the entire movement and the ideology towards Tawheed. And in that, there is beauty. So we hate the battle. We don't like it. And Kurhun lakum is like, if it's necessary, we don't like that sacrifice. It hurts. But at the same time, there's khairun lakum. There's goodness in this, for sure.
Awesome, thank you.
And that's what answers the question that was losing these personalities worth it? A person could stand after the event of Karbala and saying, was it worth it? Imam Hussein gave his life for the protection of Islam. Was it really worth it? The reality is that when you look at the school of thought Islam presents, people do not hold the relevance that the mission do. People are ready to sacrifice their most precious possession that they have for the flourishing of the mission. And that's what Imam Hussein did. And
including the
had
Prophet.
It not been... Sorry?
And including the Prophet. What's the verse? That if the Prophet becomes attains Shahada, then are you going to turn around? More important than the Prophet is the message, right?
That's why this blood was poured. It's a very beautiful analogy, they say. The blood was poured at the foot of this tree, and the fruits and the growth that this tree gets from this blood is something else. And that's what we're seeing. I'm pretty sure, had it not been for the Shahada of Ayatollah Khamenei on the very first day of the war, this presence on the streets wouldn't have been the same. The presence and the people's support is the result of that pure blood being spilled.
And I feel bad for those who are watching right now, because you don't know what we're talking about over here. When you talk about the presence of the people on ground, those who are sitting here, you know what we're talking about. The people are outside on the streets in thousands and thousands and thousands.
Every corner of the city. Like
every
sometimes
corner
you go
of the
in a corner.
city. Last night I was actually trying to think of innovative ideas on how I can portray this to the media without people saying, oh, this is AI. Because if you take videos, people are like, oh, this is AI. Like, how can we put this up? Because, I was trying to do even the maths, I wasn't able to count. Like, it's not just about the people who are standing there on each roundabout waving flags. It's about most of the cars that pass, they have either a flag of the country or they have a photo of the Shaheed.
My car doesn't have anything right now, and I've been accused of being like anti-revolution because I don't have a sticker on my car.
Why don't you?
I will, promise.
I'll give you one.
So it's amazing, like most of the population right now is behind this, right? And I think this is the proof of the victory. That in the middle of the war, after more than 30 days of the war, people are still standing out there cheering for their soldiers, still behind the values, behind the system, still promoting it, still pushing for it, still cheering for it. I think this is a big sign that Iran right now at the moment is victorious, and inshallah it will continue to be victorious.
Yeah. So if we summarize, we said if we understand victory, you have to go back to objective first and foremost. Let's look at U.S. objective. Regime change, that didn't happen. The system is very strong, very powerful. Destroying the Navy, the Strait of Hormuz is completely under the control on this side. Destroying missile capacity, the moment he's saying a speech, they're still firing. Involving the NATO and the allies, nobody wants to get involved. Taking control of the oil, absolutely didn't happen. Expanding the authority over those lands didn't happen. So one by one, the objectives of the war that they had has not been achieved. On this side, even their own people, as we mentioned, some of the big official professors, university, military people have been saying that this was a mistake, this was a big failure on our part. We've actually strengthened this side. We've turned it into a powerful nation now. And on our side, we realize that the victory is because the resistances keep going. The Tawheed has been established. The fact that we don't bow down to authorities other than Allah has become clear. It's involved people across the globe to realize that, look, this hegemony is shirk. This is away from human freedom of being able to worship Allah only. It goes against human values and principles. And therefore, this is definitely a victory that we need to smile. Enjoy. Keep being steadfast because it will come at a price. But inshallah, we have a lot of story to tell our children.
Inshallah, I think history lessons for primary school and secondary school students in the next few generations will be much more interesting than what we had to learn. We had to study les poilus, the French in the Second World War and stuff like that.
Definitely. This is very beautiful. I mean, the way history will be written as well, because this time we will be writing history, and so it'll be very beautiful to learn.
Because we're the victors, right?
Exactly. So let's ask if there's any questions from the audience, and inshallah we'll end.
Everyone's too tired.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we'll end it over here, inshallah, and then we'll get back to another discussion in the next episode. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah.